Hi, welcome. My name is Charlotte. I love colorful and sparkly makeup. I hate January, but I love blue eyeshadow. And I've said this before on my channel, but I have a lot of blue eyeshadow and I don't wear it that often. Um, so for me, January is a really nice reminder to pull these eyeshadows out and wear them. I do plan to make a January BYOP that's going to have a lot of icy blues in it, but I know that there won't be room for everything. And because I don't pull this eyeshadow out so much during the rest of the year, I wanted to make a video specifically admiring my blue eyeshadows, especially because this is, in my opinion, the absolute worst time of year. January is the second worst month out of the year, second only to February, which we have to look forward to. And honestly, looking forward to February is one of the things that makes January worse, in my opinion. So, this is a time of year where we could just use a little bit of a pick me up, and looking at pretty blue eyeshadow is one of the ways that we can make this time of year a little less shitty. This palette is like an ancient ColourPop palette that I have kind of DIY'd and magnetized. I think it kind of fits the theme a little bit, even though the surface is very crusty and dusty, as you can tell. I forget sometimes, because it's so old and dusty looking, I sometimes forget how beautiful this packaging was and how much I do love to look at it. But these are the eyeshadows that I pulled from my Magnetic Singles collection. I do have a couple that I'm going to share with you at the end that are not magnetic singles in my collection. One is like a pot eyeshadow and the other is in a palette that I haven't depotted. But I'm gonna start with these singles, and I'm not ranking them or anything like that. I actually just went in alphabetical order by the name of the shade because I couldn't really think of another way to order them. Before I get into swatching, I should just say the obligatory please like this video and subscribe to my channel, especially if you're interested in makeup content that doesn't center consumerism and buying new things. That is what I'm trying to do here on this channel. And this is hopefully one of the last videos I'm going to be filming on my phone, because I did get a camera recently, which I'm really excited about. So if you've watched any of my previous videos, I'm really hoping that the technical quality improves, because that's an aspect of all this that is totally new to me, and I'm just like figuring it out as I go. But if you have been watching, if you have subscribed, I appreciate it so much. And if you haven't, yeah, go ahead and do that. It would give me a little boost. With these shades, I've pulled a combination of like really special multi-chrome singles and things I've depotted from palettes, things that are maybe less like special but are special to me, and I love them because of the texture or the tone. So I'm going to talk about them all in more detail. But yeah, let's get into some swatching. Also, just FYI, I think there is a truck on my street that is periodically making noise. I live on a very quiet street. Like in the summer, you can hear crickets from my neighbors' yards, but for some reason, there's like always a truck on the street. So I'm starting with the shade Blue Lagoon from Looksy. And this is a shade that I'm especially excited to try out this time of year, because I actually have not worn this on my eyes yet, and I've had it now for a few months. But it's like a very vibrant blue with a purple shift. It's also got like a little bit of silver, I would say, in the sparkle. And like with most Looksy shades, it's pretty sheer on first application, but you can build it up. Just like so bright and dimensional. But again, this is a really vibrant blue. I think I'll get some use out of this in the summertime and in January. And other than that, it's definitely not an everyday friendly shade for myself. This next shade is also from Looksy. It is called Cookie Dough, and it's an iridescent blue. I really love iridescent blues, and I do have a number of them in my collection. This one is really like a vibrant sky blue, and it shifts to a very vibrant kind of indigo purple. And this makes a gorgeous inner corner. It's a beautiful topper. This next one is from Odin's Eye. I feel like it's a little bit hard panned. A lot of people did not like this formula, but this is the shade Daniel. And I think this is just a really lovely, like, bright cerulean color. And you can see that the base is like a sort of sheer cerulean blue, which I think is just really, really lovely. It makes me think of water. It makes me think of a swimming pool. I did a whole look with this color on my channel, like when I first started it, so I can link that below. I don't know if this will come across on camera because I feel like it didn't when I used it on my eyes on camera, but this has like a quite bright shift to purple. There you can kind of see it starting, but when the purple catches the light, like it is quite bright, like it is quite a nice shift, especially because this was not sold as a multi-chrome or a duochrome. It was just one of their regular shimmer shades. So I actually really love this shade. It's beautiful. And this one I also use mostly in the summer. I think, yeah, that's the other time of year when I would wear like a really vibrant blue. I've talked about this next shade a few times before on my channel. This is called Frost and it's from the Beauty Bay Earthy palette. And it's like kind of a greenish, grayish teal. There's something kind of muddy, kind of watery about this color. And I just think it's such an interesting and beautiful tone. It's not like the shiniest, most sparkly shade out there. It's definitely more of a smooth finish. But I just think it's such an interesting color. And there's so much green in there. But I still think of it as like a wintry blue teal. This one is also depotted from a palette. This is from the Dirty Martini palette from Glamlight, and the shade is called Gin. Again, I have not worn this on my eyes yet, despite having it for like 6 months now. And I think this is another shade that I'll get use on in the summer, but I definitely want to wear this in January because I think this is just, it's so beautiful. It's so vibrant. It's this just really bright, rich teal. It's so jewel-like, so dimensional, so reflective. And there's some sparkle in there, and it's just a really, really beautiful shade. It is not at all something that looks native to my skin tone because, as I mentioned before, one of the reasons that I don't wear a ton of blue is because it just looks very intense on my skin tone, which is a little bit warmer. So I think on most people, this would be a pretty statement color for sure. This shade is from Shine by SD. It's such a hyped shade. This is called Ice Blink, and it's from the collab with Seeking Shifts. I placed a small order at Shine by SD this past fall, and the reason I did instead of waiting was because I really wanted to get this shade before my no-buy restarted in case this went out of stock and or was discontinued, because I have seen this all over the internet. I was so excited about this and I just really didn't want to miss out on it. This is another iridescent blue, and again, I love iridescent blues. It's so sparkly. It's an incredible topper shade. It's definitely unique among iridescent blues because it has these orange flecks in it. On camera, usually this comes up looking sort of how it is right now, which is just kind of wet. It's really hard to capture all the multicolored sparkles in here. It's actually similar to a shade I will show you at the end. But it's got like purple, it's got a little bit of green maybe, but definitely like orange and blue. And I actually haven't used this a ton since getting it because I do find that that orange kind of throws me off a little bit because it doesn't feel like it would always go with like an icy blue look or a look where I would typically pull a blue iridescent for an inner corner or topper. I don't really know how the orange is going to tie into a lot of like looks where I would use this kind of shade, but I do think that, and Riley Seeking Shifts has said this before, that something about that orange kind of can make this shade feel more neutral, more native to sort of skin tone colors. I really need to incorporate this more. I think I'm overthinking it. I think the orange is supposed to make it tie in more easily, and I'm seeing it more as a challenge. But yeah, this is just such a beautiful wet looking shade. And it's just so unique, even in my collection where, like I said, I do have like a good few iridescent blues that I really love. And you can see that compared with Cookie Dough, Ice Blink looks much less cool toned, a little bit more neutral. This shade from Looksy called Nightfall has recently become one of my favorite blues in my collection. I think it's one of the more wearable blues I own because it sort of has this warmth to it. It's definitely a shade that I would call teal, I think. And it has a gold shimmer on it. So it gives it something very different from other more icy blues. I don't think that I would like consider this necessarily a January blue. I don't think, for example, that I would like put it in that January BYOP I plan to do because it's so like warm and golden in this really interesting, beautiful way. But yeah, I love this shade. It's got like a grayish, tealish, almost purplish base. It's got a vibrant teal blue flash and it has that golden shimmer as well. So, so lovely. And again, like I feel like I can put this all over my lids, and there's just something a little bit neutral about it, a little more effortless than a typical bright icy blue. All right, this next shade is kind of a showstopper. This is one of the dimensional multichromes from Clionadh, and it's called Oxidize. I'm curious how it will show up on camera because sometimes this shade feels purple and sometimes it feels teal, but I think it has like this really neutral quality that makes it very interesting. It's like it's surprisingly wearable considering that it's a blue purple and that it is full of sparkle, which I don't think is going to come through on camera per se, but it's full of kind of multicolored sparkles. And there's something very gray and muted about this. Sometimes I've been finding when a multichrome is gray based, it can be almost too sheer in the color, whereas this feels like it's opaque, but it also feels like it's gray and muted just in the tone. I'm not really the person to go to for very true to life, detailed, intense swatches, so I will direct you to other people to see all of the nuance within this shade, but it is just so gorgeous. I do not wear this enough because I think of it as just like really intense and special, but like I said, I do think that this is a relatively wearable multichrome. These dimensional multichromes also, they shift a little bit less because they have that sparkle sort of interfering with the shift, which I personally prefer. I prefer to have a really sparkly finish to a really intense shift. My next shade is definitely less intense than that, but I will say this is from the Beauty Bay Midnight palette. At the time I got this palette, this was actually one of the sparkliest formulas I had ever tried. And this is the shade Potion, and I still really love this shade. It's definitely similar to the Oden's Eye one I showed you. I can compare those really briefly, but it's that same kind of cerulean tone. This one doesn't have any shift, but it does have quite an intense silver sparkle. I think this is a very impressive shade for being a drugstore tier formula. I still think that Beauty Bay has a really gorgeous shimmer formula, and especially if you use a dry brush over glitter glue, I think you get that sort of scattered sparkle effect. Whereas if you build these up with your finger, they're going to turn more metallic, more opaque, but they do often have a really nice sparkle running through them that you can play up or down. Just to briefly compare to the other sort of cerulean toned shades I have in here. Oh wow, okay, this is actually much more different than I expected it to be. And I think the same will go for Blue Lagoon from Looksy. Yeah. They're definitely different values, even though I would say that tonally they're sort of in the same family. And I love using this as like sort of a, I guess an outer corner shade, or a lot of the time I like to build my looks around sort of an inner lid shade and an outer lid shade. Not so much like an outer corner deepening shade, but just like the lid shade for the outer half of my eye, if that makes sense. All right, this is the final magnetic single I'm going to show you. This is magic. This is the shade Takeover from Shine by SD. It was another one that I got in that small order I placed for Ice Blink, and I had this on my radar for so long. It's so similar to a lot of shades like Ganymede from Terra Moons, Paleomon, I think, from Divina. And this is just the version I went with because I was so intrigued by the way that Shine by SD's formula was described as being like dry but sparkly. And this is just one of those like sky blue shades with rainbow shifts. It's just fucking incredible. I hope these are all showing up on camera, but in front of me they're so obvious and vibrant. So there's this golden green, there's a golden orange, and there's a cherry red. And they're all sitting on top of this sheer kind of sky blue base. And this shade is sparkly, but it's also so shifty, and I'm just obsessed with it. I think this is my favorite multichrome that I've ever tried, like my favorite proper multichrome. And the cherry red is sort of what predominates on the eye, which I really don't like the shade like magenta. I don't like reds that turn into pinks, but this one I make allowances for because it does feel more like a red than a pink for some reason, for me anyway. I haven't worn this very much since I got it. Like I wore it like with light blue mattes, and I really liked how that look came out. But I do find these kinds of really intense multichromes, I find them very intimidating to pair with non-obvious mattes, I guess. I don't really know how people can get multiple looks out of the same multichrome. And I think that's something that I'm going to be troubleshooting a little bit in future videos. I have some plans to do that with this shade and maybe a couple of other more shifty multichromes. Because I've paired this before with a brown transition in the crease, and I really didn't like how it came out. And I think part of it is because as I was saying when I talked about oxidize, I think for intense shifty multichromes like this, a lot of the time the base, it doesn't come through on the eyes weirdly. I think this went on like too sheer. To have that blue base come through, I think I might need to put a blue shimmer underneath it, which is kind of weird. I think I've had trouble like choosing multichromes in the past because the base shade in swatches seems so present, but then on the eyes, I feel like the base shade can really disappear in favor of the dominant shift. And then you can end up with just a color you didn't expect to have all over your lid. So that's something I'm going to troubleshoot, and I think I want to troubleshoot that in a couple of videos coming up. So stay tuned for that. But this I really want to, I want to learn how to do it justice because it's just so incredible, so special, so interesting. It's this incredible, incredible rainbow. I just have two to show you that are not in my magnetic singles collections. Also, sorry, my hands are just an absolute mess. I'm going to start with a shade from the Rose Quartz palette from Huda. And the shade I want to share with you is this one, Moon Magic. Another gorgeous blue iridescent. And it's very, very similar to Cookie Dough from Looksy. It's got that bright blue and it shifts to purple. Very similar to the purple in Cookie Dough, but I think this one might be like a little bit more pink than Cookie Dough is. Let me quickly compare this to Cookie Dough. I am going to have a video comparing all my Looksy shades to things that were already in my collection, but I just haven't finished filming all of the clips yet. Yeah, I would say they're very similar, but Cookie Dough, the blue is slightly more of a sky blue, whereas for Moon Magic, it's a little bit more like indigo periwinkle, almost verging on purple, and then Moon Magic shifts to like more of a pink purple. And cookie dough shifts to indigo. Finally, this is the shade Hollow Glam from LA Girl. It's yet another iridescent blue, but this one is a more chunky glitter shade. It definitely feels gritty to the touch, and it's just completely transparent and iridescent. So glittery, so sparkly. And this does have a purple flash as well, so very similar to those other ones in tone, although it's much sparklier, different in texture. I was thinking about this one when I was swatching Ice Blink, because this also has like a little bit of green and a little bit of orange in it, which I find so interesting and kind of strange. So I kind of wanted to compare them, but yeah, Ice Blink has none of that vibrant purple. And this glitter is just very magical, tapped over a variety of different colors. I've worn it over green shadows before. Compared to Moon Magic, the purple shift here is less pink, more of that indigo color. So those are the blues that I'm really excited to pull out this January. Stay tuned for a January BYOP video. I'm going to be building a palette that does not include all of these colors, but that also includes, you know, some silvers, some mint greens, as well as some blues and teals. I'm really excited to dig into this kind of color story for the next month. And I will also be posting a January Shop My Stash for sort of non-eyeshadow makeup. So stay tuned for those. I also have like tons of videos coming down the pike that I have ideas for that I've been planning and outlining, but I think I'm gonna wait to film those until I have my new camera and I can just make sure that those are like as high quality as they can be in terms of the technical side. But in the meantime, have a fabulous new year. Happy January. We'll get through it together. Bye.